Hello viewers, welcome to the Arena Show, a show that inspires and educates you. But first, let's start with the headlines. 30th January has been marked as the swearing-in day for the National Super Alliance leader Raila Odinga. Uganda Judge Salome Bossa joins the International Criminal Court in The Hague. A former Class 8 student is now receiving counseling after trying to commit suicide due to lack of school fees after getting a chance at Mama Ngina High School in Mombasa. And in the world of sports, Felipe Coutinho has moved to Barcelona despite Ronaldo's advice. Back to today's topic, we will be discussing about science, and our subtopic today is the genetic modified organisms, and we'll be talking to our reporter Heziba Mbalasu, who has more details.
In the United States, livestock has been consuming feeds made from GMO products for the last 20 years. In Kenya, GMO was introduced in the early 1990s and it was banned in May 2017.
Not that there is so much of this practice within a part of the world, but my understanding and what I've heard about GMOs is that it has a tendency to, the foods that are produced through GMO are actually, they tend to be resistant to pests and diseases, viruses, which I think ultimately, if that is what we would produce, and because of the challenge that we have within our environment, if we can have crops that are resistant to viruses, pests, and bacteria, then of course we would end up producing crops that can then pass that test, and maybe even as we sell, we would gain more income, shorter period, and perhaps on a limited space, so that then it's actually GMOs are generally cheap.
Almost all the foods that we consume contain DNA and protein. The DNA and protein, either GMO or non-GMO foods, are digested into our system.
But I wouldn't advise people to take GMOs because they expose you to diseases.
That they are preserved with a lot of chemicals. So these chemicals finally they result to ulcer.
Mimea inakuwa haraka hiyo ya GMO foods, lakini kwa upande mwingine it can bring cancer to human being.
Feels like there's very little fact to get a hold of in terms of finding out what's really going on in the matter. You'll find that on one side there are lobbyists who are trying to present this thing as a miracle cure for all hunger, and on the other side who only presents the negative side. So it's very difficult to know what is good neutral advice on whether or not you should adopt GM foods.
Kenya's National Biosafety Authority has urged the government to reconsider the ban on genetically modified foods prepared in the country. Mr. Wellington Way, an executive from the NBA, argued that there was no scientific proof to support the assumption that the foods were harmful to consumers. Debate on whether the government should lift the ban on GMOs has divided local leaders, with others claiming the foods should be allowed to feed thousands of Kenyans who are under the constant threat of starvation caused by drought and rainfall failure, especially in the northern parts of the country. The government imposed a ban on the foods, arguing that it exposed consumers to cancer risks, especially after long-time consumptions. It, however, failed to prove its claims. Some members of the public, on the other hand, castigated the government on its move to the ban of foods as families depended on it for survival. In a bid to reinforce the ban, government outlawed the importation of GMOs.
National Biosafety Act deals with regulation of research in biotechnology, transfer, transport, and use of all the biologically modified organisms in the country. Biotechnological organisms or genetically modified organisms, rarely do they have negative health impacts, because before they are released into the field, they have undergone clear checks and tests from the laboratory to the fields and also to the community, or what we call the population-based studies. And they have been approved to be effective and safe for human use.
According to our interviews and expertise, it is critical to know that clarification of GMO products should be made. I'm Balasi Bukasu reporting for the Arena Show.
Jamii Milk, nutrition for champions.
Good morning, viewers. My name is Sheila Chelagat, and welcome to our Health Matter show today. And today on our show, we'll be discussing about GMO and human health. On our show today, we have Mr. Dennis Otieno, an agribusiness journalist, to help us discuss on health matters concerning the genetic modified organism in food. So, Mr. Dennis, would you tell us the difference between genetic modified organism and genetic modified foods? Is there a difference?
To sum it all up in very simple terms, a genetically modified organism is basically an organism that has been,
the foods are already
let me say,
processed
changed.
Foods not on the farm.
This is in terms of, they're not processed. This is in terms of how they've been grown. Yeah, looking at the way in which they've been manipulated. But it's the same. It's just like having normal seeds. The only difference that comes is with regard to their qualities when they are compared. So looking at for the normal foods, the organic foods, you realize looking at the way they grow, some are not resistant to drought or pests as such when you compare them with GMO foods. GMO crops are highly resistant to drought and also pests. These are two things that have actually been affecting our farmers. In Kenya, yes, indeed, it has been banned, and it was banned in November 2012 by the Kibaki administration. They cited health concerns. But as you can see, of course, we do have fruits being imported from South Africa. South Africa being a nation that has already adopted GM foods. But in Kenya, you see, for the staples that we normally take, that's the maize, a bit of beans, but then again, maize being our major staple. It's actually the one that the National Biosafety is conducting trials on. They did ban because of what they've been hearing happening in nations like...
so it's assumption. It's about hearing.
These are assumptions because the scientists who have been busy conducting...
But we cannot put health of civilians, the citizens of the country, on assumptions.
Not tampering. I mean, we have scientists who are busy conducting, they're busy conducting tests. And even as we speak right now, GMO, consumption of GMO foods and also growing of GMO foods has actually been banned in Kenya. But what is happening right now, we do have the National Biosafety Authority, which is actually the body that has been mandated to conduct trials on GMO foods.
But being told that time is over, would you give us your last remarks on the issue?
I think as much as we have various, various stakeholders involved, those who are against the GMOs, those who are pro-GMOs, we should just put the interest of the country first. Because let's give scientists their time for them to fully conclude tests and experiments on this particular technology. And also, yeah, we should also listen to the rest who raised concerns about health, concerns about effects to the environment. We should also listen to them. But by the end of the day, it should be a win-win situation for everybody. Because once we decide to adopt GMOs, we should get ready for the consequences, which we might not see today. We might see them even after 50 or 100 years.
And that marks the end of our show today. I hope you've learned more on GMO and you'd be able to take a caution on whether you want to remain organic or go the GMO way. But before we go, we have our hyper-local reporter, Miss Sally Kabwe, on grounds, who will take us through Daystar University streets to tell us more on what the citizens are saying about GMO and what their take is. I've been your host, Sheila Chelagat. We can continue with more discussion on our social media platform. On Facebook, it's Sheila Chelagat, and on YouTube, Sheila Chumba. Thank you for being with us. Have a lovely day.
Hi people, I'm Sally and my friends and I will take us through our opinions on GMOs, and Faith will go first.
Hi, GMO, genetically modified organisms, have both a good and bad. The good is that it has helped the world and most drought-stricken countries to have food in terms of food security, because we see agricultural crops have been modified to withstand harsh weather conditions, and this has helped improve the food security of most countries.
Thank you, Faith, and we'll have Waigi on the same.
Hey everyone, so my opinion in GMOs is that GMOs have affected us negatively. For example, we can see that most of the chemicals that form GMOs are causing health hazards in our bodies. For example, cancer. That's why we are seeing people, death rate is high at a young age. Also, GMO, we can say that it's affecting our local economy. Like our local traders, we opt to import things that are ready, because for GMOs, within 2 days, let's say something is up. But how God created, like we say, animals or plants is they go through a process. So it's affecting our local traders. So for me, I support that GMOs are affecting us negatively, though they have positive effects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Waigi. And now I'll give my opinion on the same. And I would say that, like they have both said, GMOs have both positive and negative effects. And I would say if we would settle on the local products we have, it would be a better idea than having risking our lives for things we could easily avoid. And thank you very much. This was Sally, Waigi, and Faith.